So we're here this morning in my grandfather, Mr. Forrest Wood's Outdoor Sports Gallery. It's a culmination of his entire life, him and Nina's, and the different things that happened with it. And really it's a good representation of what the American dream looks like. So we're going to spend just a little bit of time in here this morning, let you guys look around, show you some of the things that, at least that I think is cool, maybe you will too. So let's see, I was the 5th generation to graduate from Flippin High School. And there's been six. We're working on the 7th now. Okay. But Forrest graduated in 1950, I believe that's right. And so this is interesting to me because this is his contract with the Flippin School District to be the school bus driver his senior year of school. And so he was paid $2 a day to drive the school bus to and from school each day that he was attending. And now you fast forward to 2024, and you go find me a senior that would be trustworthy and responsible enough to crawl in a school bus every morning before the sun comes up and go gather up children and take to school. Keep in mind, this was a very rural part of the country. There's probably wasn't, I bet he didn't hit a paved road the whole time he was doing it. And he loved to tell the story. Obviously, I wish he was here where he could do so, but he said on more than one occasion, I played hooky and Nina and I snuck down to the river and we caught fish for the rest of the day and got back in time to haul the kids back to school.
There you go.
But to me, that's always an interesting thing to show. You see some very early articles of whether that be a brochure or a bill of materials for a trailer, even business cards before area codes existed.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was a GL number. That was how they used a telephone back then, GL-3-2450.
Wow.
I always loved his he was good about one-liners, and here, this was obviously before he was in the boat business. This is his guide service. Have tackle, will travel.
There you go.
Yeah, just a lot of interesting stuff. Let me get this easel out of the way. Another point of interest that's been talked about a lot, but I like to give you kind of the version that's my translation. In 1968 is when Forrest started building boats. The first Ranger boats were built then. It really started to explode in '69. My mother was still in high school, but she helped. And so fast forward to May of '71, and my mother was about to graduate high school. And it just so happened that Roland Martin was in town for the day. He was eating dinner just like we were last night at Forrest and Nina's house. And Forrest heard the fire sirens here in town. So they live about 3 miles east of here. He said, Roland, I think I better go check out what's on fire. And Roland said, you go right ahead. So he crawled in his truck, started to town. When he did, he knew what it was. It was his boat factory, uninsured, burning to the ground. So what Forrest did was he busted out the window to his only office. I think it was only office in the little building, because the building itself was a carryover from the construction of the dam. It was a Silver Star Saloon. It was literally a bar that was abandoned, and he started building boats in it. Right. But he went through his office window. He had an Army surplus desk. You've seen them old metal Army surplus desk. He had all the boat orders in that bottom file cabinet. He reached in and grabbed all of those boat orders and jumped back out and let the thing burn to ashes, which is what you see here. The very next morning, the telephone company brought him a telephone, and he nailed it to a telephone pole, and he called every customer that had a boat on order. You know how many of them backed out? Not a one.
Really?
Nope. In fact, a lot of them offered to prepay in advance to help him get started back. So my mother forewent going to college, and they, in 40 days and 40 nights, put a building back together and retooled the molds. They had to have molds just like we saw earlier to build the product, and in 40 days and nights, they was back building boats again.
Good.
That's perseverance.
Yeah. That's a dadgum workhorse.
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
perseverance.
Yes.
But yeah, just really interesting. We didn't know these pictures existed till on up in the 90s. Yep.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Like the dog.
You'll see some other stuff like that would be me and my brother there out at the factory one morning as a load of delivery trucks were arriving. I'm sure we were a lot of help.
Yeah, looks like y'all were working.
But you know what? Not a lot's changed. I'm still messing with delivery trucks, and that's probably been 40 years ago.
That's how it started, huh?
There might be one of these in existence, but there won't be one in this condition. So this is a 69 model. So there was only a handful built in 1968. But in 1969, as it started to ramp up, Forrest had developed a friendship with a man by the name of Jerry McInnes, who had the Fishing Hole TV show. Jerry was local to this area. He moved here after playing professional baseball. Forrest actually guided him on the White River. And so Jerry had it was the early stages of his show, the Fishing Hole, and so Forrest was going to sponsor him, and he provided him a boat. That's this boat here. And Jerry himself told me this story, and I'll try to do it justice, but Jerry asked me, he said, "Do you know why this boat's red?" And I said, "Jerry, I don't have any idea why this boat's red." And he said, "We'll tell you why. I was up at Lake Champlain in Connecticut, and I was filming a smallmouth show, and I was staying in this little hotel. And I went to that hotel after fishing all day, and I turned on the television, and for the first time in my life, I saw color television." And he said, it was so vibrant to see the color on that screen, it hit me that that was coming nationwide or worldwide. And so I told myself then I needed to do something that made an impact when my show was on television in color. So he wanted a red boat so it would jump out on that screen, To add more to the story, he said, it just so happened that the sports network that was on that color television was based just down the road in Bristol, Connecticut. So I looked them up in the phone book, I drove over there, and I met with those people, and I bought time from them, and so they started airing the Fishing Hole TV show. And that sports network went on to be ESPN. And to this day, other than Sports Center itself, the Fishing Hole is the longest running television show ever has been or will be on the ESPN Sports Network. Now, isn't that interesting?
Amazing.
So
yes.
that's the infancy of the fishing industry that we know today. And it's just, to me, I'm so proud to have known men like that were there on the front end of it. Things that we take for granted today. And I could spend all morning telling stories on both Jerry McInnes and Forrest, but that one's nice. But this was as good as it got. This was the equivalent of looking at our VXS 21 today, and I think that's the concept, that's the strategy, is to not ever rest on your laurels, to build the next one better than the last one. Just continue to innovate and advance. That's what keeps us going, and I think that's what keeps the customer coming back. Because what would have happened if we'd have stopped here?
Right.
What would have happened if we'd have just stopped here?
Passed you.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yep. And but just to me, that's just a great illustration of from yesterday to what we just saw and today. This is getting mid-range through the world. This is the 25th anniversary boat that they supplied to Forrest and Nine as a gift to them. And again, not indifferent than what I just said, there wasn't a better one built that day. There wasn't at that point in time. And to me, it's still a beautiful boat.
It is. It sure is.
A local carpenter built this entire facility. He steamed this lumber to build this with Forrest oversight.
Right here's the room, but look here. Bobcats.
So, as we talked about at dinner last night, this whole mess started with the construction of Bull Shoals Dam.
Yes.
So it finished in '51. It wasn't long after that. Those rainbow German brown trout started getting big. Tourism was really becoming in vogue in America. You know, it was post-World War II. The economic times were good. People had money. They were getting older, and they learned that the value of going somewhere and enjoying themselves.
Right.
So they started finding their way to the Ozark Mountains here at the White River. And Forrest both worked for a guide service and then had his own. But these are some early pictures of that. This is Forrest himself with a 7.5 Evinrude and a wooden boat, wooden John boat going down the White River. And just lots of interesting stories. My mother worked at that boat dock, you know, and back then you could only buy ice by the cube. You get a block of ice and carry it down and ship it off and put in your cooler for the day. You know, what we take for granted going to Sonic, right?
Exactly.
And just they did what was called float trips. So you would put in upstream and float down. Depending on the length of the float, you would stay the night, camp out on the riverbank, and then take out at the lower end of the river. And these boats would have to all be disassembled and loaded by hand onto these bob trucks, as they called them.
Wow.
And you see, this is an interesting picture to me because that's my grandmother Nina there. Yeah. and she'd probably driven the truck down there to help them load out. There's Forrest doing dishes on used a lot of Army stuff, Army surplus tents and cots and things of that sort. You'd bring cooks along the way, and just a lot of what we call old timers, but guys that were just early on in the process of what is now a very famous stream. So I live 3 miles from right here. You just go back to the northeast and down a hill along the White River. And where the road to my house goes off the hill to the White River, there's a little creek runs in. And so Forrest lived up above that. And this story here, and this is the actual Alto twin, which went on to be Evinrude outboard. So this is the actual outboard, but I can read this because it'll be easier. I'll try to. When I was 12, 14 years old, my friend Harold Stovall and I found an old riverboat in a huge drift on the White River down by the upper end of the Denton Ferry Farm. So that's right over there. We went back to get it at the first opportunity, likely when it was too wet to plow. We worked long and hard to dig it out of the drift, and then we poled it upstream, so they'd used a pole to push that thing up the river, approximately 2 miles to the hollow above Wildcat Shoals, where we tied it up below a towhead. So what we call a point on the White River is called a towhead, a little gravel towhead where you can stick the boat in behind it. We were soon able to purchase this engine from Mr. Jim Reed. You remember who he bought it, and he bought it for $5. What a great experience when we got it cranked up. We spent what spare time we had fishing for whatever we could catch, with limb lines, trot lines, noodling, or finally with a casting rod and reel. I carried my dad's axe, hammer, and nails and material to the river and chopped out a hole in a hollow tree to store this engine and our other equipment. This tree is now gone, but the Alto twin and the fond memories are still with me.
Wow.
Yeah, nice wanting to go fishing.
That is priceless right there.
So always enjoy sharing that with people. That's because neat. To me, it just helps wrap your head around what from there to where we are today.
Exactly. Exactly.
There you see the entire family. He was inducted in the Arkansas Business Hall of Fame. I've been to more than I can count Hall of Fames that he was either being inducted or others were. But he stole the show that night. There's my wife Lisa that you met last night at dinner. But it was, as you might expect, if you think Arkansas business for a minute, you can't forget the J.B. Hunts and the Sam Waltons and the Don Tysons, that type of group. And so as he was being inducted, the room was pretty stiff. It was, you know how they can be at those white tablecloth events. But Forrest, if you've never heard him speak, you sure missed out, because he stood up and I could tell the room was still too stiff for his liking. Right. So he just started in telling good old boy stories. And when he started telling the stories about having having kidney stones, the place just went. He had them all in stitches before the night was over, and it was just so much fun and very memorable to me. I'll give you for instance on it. He was talking about that catheter that would be in him, and he said that cute little nurse walks in and says, "Mr. Wood, you need to get ready." And he said, "I'm here to tell you, you can't get ready for what comes next."
Guys, we're here at the museum, and it has been a fantastic day. People, if you're go close to Flippin, Arkansas, you've got to come in to the Forrest Elwood Museum. And I can't say enough about it. It's just made our trip, and if you're ever there, hopefully we will be able to get you the stuff here that'll make you see where bass fishing was, where boat making was, and compare it to where it is today. For him to be as humble and a family man as what he was, to accept what he has done, is just what we need to learn to try to be like. So just please look back at family. It goes all the way back through there. He was real high on family. Family, friends, fishing is fun. So all the 4 F's go together. So Forrest Wood can be another F in there that can make everything complete and give you a handful of good advice. So y'all have a great day.